And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace. We're brought to you by our friends over at the First Cup Coffee Company. They've got a flavor for every freedom-loving American, so check them out today at firstcup.com. Promo code Deace, you'll get a discount when you do. Firstcup.com, promo code Deace. They put the roast on date right there on every single bag. Firstcup.com, promo code Deace. All right, coming up on today's show, we haven't had a chance to do one of these in a while. You're going to get to ask me anything coming up in the next hour of the show. Oh, I also want to make sure, we love to do this whenever we have a new partner on the program. Want to introduce a brand new partner here on the show. They're called Chirp. Had a chance to try some of their stuff. If you're big into preventative health, you're big into, the trigger point world, the massager world, that's literally how I've avoided, knock on wood, not having, plus losing, 50 some odd more pounds, not having reoccurring back problems and issues anymore. I put Chirp to the test. I waited. I wanted to make sure I had a chance to try it before we talk to you guys about it. So I tried the Chirp Contour when I got back from all this travel I've been doing and all these airplanes. And it's weird too, because I can't sleep on a plane, but I keep falling asleep on planes while sitting straight up, but I cannot stay asleep. And I fall asleep and my neck is just kind of sitting there dangling, which isn't good. So I tried the Chirp Contour when I got home. Wow. A massive difference in my neck for sure. The Chip Halo, it's a wearable wireless device that uses transcutaneous electric nerve stimulation. I think that's how that's pronounced. I think I nailed that, actually. And electrical muscle stimulation to help with pain relief, muscle recovery, circulation. That's next on my list to try that one next. All right, so if you want to see the incredible array of healthcare products that they have, preventative health products they have, rehabilitation products they have that you can do yourself at home. All right. These are FDA cleared devices that work just like the clinic treatments. Visit GoChirp.com/Steve. 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 Use the promo code Steve at checkout. You'll get 10% off site-wide. GoChirp, like a birdie chirp. GoChirp.com/Steve. Promo code Steve for 10% off site-wide. And with that, let's get it rolling with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by A Time for Rejoicing.
We were informed today, an hour ago, that all our live hostages returned back to us. What excitement.
Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House.
Still seems rather surreal we're at this point, but thanks to the strong leadership of President Trump and his State Department, along with the strong leadership of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the 20 remaining living hostages from the October 7th, 2023 massacre are now back at home. President Trump, after traveling all night on Air Force One to reach Israel, promptly addressed the Israeli Knesset.
After 2 harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious. 28 more precious loved ones are coming home at last to rest in this sacred soil for all of time. And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace.
Trump also made a point of praising Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
And I have a prediction that Marco will go down, I mean this, as the greatest Secretary of State in the history of the United States. I believe that. I believe it. And he and I, we really fought it out. You remember, he was tough. He was nasty. Who the hell thought this was going to happen, Marco, right? And now I'm saying he's going to go down as the greatest. He will.
Trump says it's time to turn the page on a dark chapter, even by Middle Eastern standards, for that region.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly.
Again, it seems borderline unfathomable. We're at this point to begin with, and our thoughts and prayers are obviously with the families of the hostages who didn't make it back alive. But I'm not sure there's a better example of peace through strength that's unfolded like this in recent times. In other news and back at home, China late last week threatened to basically put the kibosh on the production of any product globally that uses even trace amounts of rare earths minerals either mined or refined in China. That would have sent the entire globe into a meltdown. Trump blasted Beijing for the new directive, announced a new 100% tariff on China, as well as export controls on critical software to the CCP. Sounds like China is now backing off. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, though, is not happy.
We have approached a relationship with China with great respect. The Chinese are very big on symbolism, and I can tell you it was highly inappropriate for them to announce these export controls on the day that the peace deal was announced and overshadow that. I can tell you trying to get leverage in front of a meeting with Donald Trump is a bad idea.
The government shutdown now approaches its second full week. Still no sign of an exit ramp. Who will pick the cotton? Update, here's Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
And as a business owner in the construction industry and as a realist, I can say we have to do something about labor, and that needs to be a smarter plan than just rounding up every single person and deporting them just like that. Right. So, and I'm going to get pushback on that, but I'm just living in reality from here on out.
Yeah.
And if anybody's mad at me for saying the truth, then I'm sorry.
In Virginia, Democrat Attorney General candidate Jay Jones was one of the topics that came up in the gubernatorial debate between Democrat Abigail Spanberger and Republican Winsome Earl Sears. We didn't have a chance to talk about this story last week, but Jay Jones had some old text messages resurface where he wished death upon a Republican lawmaker in Virginia and said he hopes the lawmaker's children die in their mother's arms. Totally normal stuff. Well, that led to this moment at the aforementioned debate the other night.
Would it take him pulling the trigger? Is that what would do it? And then you would say he needs to get out of the race? Abigail, you have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your three children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail?
Those of you listening, Democrat candidate Abigail Spanberger doesn't even make eye contact with Winsome Earl Sears. Prior to those text messages, Spanberger and Jones had been running together as an item. We'll see where this race goes. And finally, we go to South Carolina, where Paul Dans is running a primary campaign against Lindsey Graham for U.S. Senate. Dans was one of the architects for Project 2025, by the way. Here he is in a video over the weekend urging Lindsey Graham, like the rest of us, to just be honest about who he truly is.
Hey, so happy National Coming Out Day. You know, Lindsey, I think it's a day for you to be honest with the voters of South Carolina. There's nothing to be ashamed about. Everybody knows, just come out and admit it. You're a liberal Democrat.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Very nice. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you're struggling with chronic pain, a solution could be as little as $20 away, at least to get you started. It's called the 3-week quick start from our friends at Relief Factor. Now, no guarantees, but over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start for just $20. 70% of them saw such good results in 3 weeks or less. They stuck with the product long term. So why don't you see if you don't see a difference in your pain in 3 weeks or less with the drug-free supplement that goes after the inflammation in your joints that's likely the cause of your chronic pain. ReliefFactor.com is where you can go. Try their 3-week quick start. It's just $20 at ReliefFactor.com. Again, that's ReliefFactor.com.
You've written several commercials and speeches for candidates in the past. Do you have a side hustle in South Carolina going on that Aaron and I don't know about?
I do not. And obviously you can tell I'm also not doing a side hustle for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think you guys can see that as well. Yes. Marjorie Taylor Greene making the argument that every amnesty hack ever has made. I mean, I don't want it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, no more criticisms of Lindsey Graham's or any of those kinds of people. Those are all their talking points. We have to live in the real world. As Aaron said, who's going to pick the cotton? Who's going to wash the windows?
Steve, there's just too much money. There's just too much money, Steve.
Those are all the same arguments that have been made by every other single hack. And now she's just outed herself as just another hack. Maybe a lot nuttier. but a hack nevertheless.
How is there not enough able-bodied white men in Georgia to do the construction labor? I get Massachusetts because, they're perming their hair there, but
correct.
How not in Georgia?
Speaking of able-bodied men, let's talk about what we woke up to this morning. And I have been very reserved. There's been days of discussion about this. I've said very little about it because I just wanted to wait and see if Hamas was going to come through with their end of the bargain. And today they did. Now you'll notice none of the hostages left are women. What does that tell you? All the hostages that remain are the men. But they were returned today. And that was confirmed by Bibi Netanyahu. And the president has had unparalleled success in the Middle East going back to his first term. And at the time, I analyzed it that what he had done is he had correctly calculated. He had seen a side of the Arab world that the think tanks on either side don't often get to see. The craven side, the business side of things. As Todd likes to say, the let's just be groovy side of things. He had built hotels in places like Istanbul, for example. He had been business partners with people like Erwin in Turkey, for example. And his calculus was that if we just took the so-called Palestinian question off the table, and again, there's no such thing as a Palestinian. It's not a place. It's never existed. It's made up. It was created as a troll by a Roman emperor after he chloroformed the place in 110 AD of the remaining Jews and drove them out, those that he didn't kill. And then he renamed it Palestine as a troll. The people claiming to be Palestinians aren't even native to the land going back to that era, let alone Bible times. Many of them are Arabs that were thrown out, subcultures, subsects, that were thrown out of other countries, particularly Jordan, and settled there on the West Bank. There is no such place. It's a made-up place like Xanadu, like Shangri-La. It does not exist. And there is no such people as a Palestinian people. There's no Palestinian people to free. There already was a de facto two-state solution there. Going back to 2008, they were given autonomy there. The made-up Palestinian people were. And then they turned around with their autonomy and elevated Hamas into positions of power, a terrorist organization whose name comes right out of the Old Testament scriptures as examples of extreme, depraved violence. Those are facts. Nothing I said is in dispute, except maybe your worldview that doesn't want to accept them. But that would be a you problem and not mine. My worldview is not in opposition of facts. Yours would be. So the president made a calculation in his first term that if he bypassed the Palestinian question, that a lot of these Arab caliphs and sheiks really don't have any more regard, are tired of endless warfare with Israel over a bunch of, frankly, a subsect of people they don't care about either, frankly. And he made this calculation. If I took them off the table, if we just took the so-called Palestinian question off the table, what would be the rest? In other words, is this a false objection or a real one? And this is a classic negotiating tactic. This is where you're seeing the president's art of the deal worldview is coming to fruition. So then what would be your next objection to peace? What would it be? Turns out they really didn't have one. And he set the stage for all of this in the speech that he gave in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in front of them, right to their faces, when he said, basically, the era of us telling you how to live your lives and govern your people is over. We're not doing that anymore. So these are the new rules. If you want to be left alone and you leave us alone, we don't care what you do. If you want to make money with us, we're happy to make money with you. If you get in our way, I'm going to Moab you guys all the way back to the Ottoman Empire. That was basically the speech.
It was.
Right to their faces. Just told them that right to their faces. And it wasn't a bunch of bravado. It was just straight up that this is how it's going to roll. I'll Moab you guys back to the Ottomans if you get in our way. At the same time, though, we won't get in your way. Not for us to tell you how to govern your people, not for us to transport our worldview over here and make the Middle East safe for democracy. We're not into that. We're not doing that anymore. So we're not going to nation build over here, and we'll leave you alone. Don't get in the way of us building our nation, or you're going to wish you had left us alone. Or if you would love to have lucrative financial partnerships with no strings attached other than peace, let's all make money together. That laid the groundwork for this. And it became the Abrahamic Accords. We were this close to normalizing relationships between Israel and Saudi Arabia before the 2020 election was stolen. The president took a big gamble that what he had seen and witnessed and negotiated himself, first person in the Arab world, would translate to public policy outside of the marketplace. And he turned out to be right. Since taking office again, he's doubled down on that gamble, but he even raised the stakes. And said, not only do I think you folks really don't care about the so-called Palestinian question, but are largely just genuflecting to political interest in your own country who are radicals that you dislike for different reasons than us, but you dislike just the same. But I also don't think you guys really care about Iran either. So the goal of Iran was to test this détente. They failed that test. And on a Saturday night, when you and I were out in Southern California at Seth Gruber's event, we came back from the event, sitting in our hotel rooms, turned the TV on, and watched this play out live, right?
Right, yes.
And another message was sent. I meant it. If you get in our way, you will pay. Iran got in our way by proceeding with a nuclear program, got in our way, and they were made to pay. Another message was sent to the Arab world, who doesn't like Iran either, because the Iranians aren't Arabs. They're the redheaded stepchild of the Islamic world. It's one of the reasons, frankly, I think that they overcompensate on the terrorist front, trying to prove themselves all the time. They're kind of the Samaritans of the Islamic world, if you know the biblical analogy I'm making. They also have very strong ties to Hamas. Now, what's the difference in whether Hamas will keep its word this time when it did in others? There's not much left of Hamas, folks. Gaza is a parking lot. For nearly 2 full years, the Israelis have demolished this place. And then the final gambit is when a leader of Hamas tried to escape to Qatar. And the Israelis got to him on Qatari soil. And that was the final message. And then you'll notice the entire time this is going on, it's funny, we've got elements in our own country losing their minds that the Israelis are doing this in Gaza, including on the American right. You know who you never heard from? The governments of Saudi Arabia, the governments of Egypt, the governments of Jordan. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Notice that the Arab countries did not threaten escalate. There's got to be a deadline. If this escalates, then we're going to have to get involved. They stayed relatively silent and allowed Israel to parking lot this place. They paved it. There's not much of Hamas left. So what does that tell you, or at least imply to you, about what a lot of these Arab countries think of these so-called Palestinian elements as well and their ties to Iran? What does that tell you, probably? Or at least implies that they were at least to some degree in favor, particularly if they don't have to have their hands on the murder weapon, they were in favor of some form of demolition to diminishment of these elements, even within their own ranks. That's what it tells you. Because we have seen on multiple occasions, including the day after May 15, 1948, consortium of Arab countries align themselves militarily against Israel and act. We did not see that here. In fact, what you saw, for example, when Iran went after the Iron Dome, you actually saw Jordanian and Saudi and Egyptian military elements work to shoot down Iranian drones and missiles. That's what you actually saw. And this gambit has now paid off for the president as well. Now, the Israelis get some credit for this. If their operation in Iran had not gone as smoothly as it did, I think we all know, and we said this at the time, that Trump would have cut bait and said, you guys just are amateurs and I'm not taking on any more water for you. That's what he would have done. Mm-hmm. But the Israelis pulled it off. The Israelis also managed for the last 2 years to so diminish Gaza that, frankly, it was debated more on Tucker Carlson's show, rightly or wrongly. It was debated more there in our own country than you saw it debated within the Arab world. I didn't see George Stephanopoulos' trans mustached sister getting an audience on Al Jazeera every night. Maybe it happened. I don't know. But I never knew she existed until she came over here. Did you know she existed? I didn't know.
I did not.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that.
And I think what you saw is that the Arab world has some different opinions about this than you've been led to believe. Now, there are some lines, like Trump saying, I'm not going to allow the Israelis to settle Gaza. There are clearly some lines.
You mean the West Bank?
Or the West Bank, I'm sorry, yes. There are clearly some lines that have to be drawn, and that's part of any alliance or coalition. But it should be noted, for the last 2 years, while we were calling each other anti-Semites or not really America first or traitors, if you had questions and debated this one way or the other, we had way more consternation about this than they did in Mecca, Riyadh, Cairo. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because of what's probably going to come next. They're going to Dubai the place. That's what I think. That's what I absolutely believe is going to come next. I don't know what George Strait's oceanfront property sounds like in Arabic. We're going to find out. They're going to Dubai the place. That's what it's going to be. Some kind of, version of the UAE luxury oasis. That's what it's going to be. As a buffer zone. That's what I absolutely believe is going to come next. And if you're sitting in Tehran right now, you need to ask yourselves, how much longer would you like to live? And how much do you truly believe in your ideology? Because it's very clear there's a shrinking amount of it within the Arab world that surrounds you that still believes in it. The ground on that is shrinking. And while I still don't think in any way, shape, or form Islam is compatible with Western civilization, Western civilization, though, has this thing Islam does not have called love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? And so as long as they're not getting in our way, I am under no obligation whatsoever as a believer to get into theirs, correct?
Correct.
None. Now, that does not exist within Islam, but as long as they keep that over there and allow me to visit if I want and let me have respect what I believe, like they do in Dubai, for example, then that's not my argument, is it? It's my argument when you no longer do that and you come to my part of the world and try to impose your will on me. That's when it becomes... Those crusades you heard so much about, they were defensive, not offensive. They were in response to Islamic invasion. Christian Europe could not get its act together for decades and didn't want to and was divided among warlords and kings and the church. What united it? Islam invaded it. That's what united it. We've had sects and denominations, even under one Holy Roman Church, for a millennia. There were sects, denominations, divisions, arguments. Those schisms were happening. Nothing's new. What changed is Islam invaded us, and then all those people looked at each other and said, as much as we hate one another, learning Arabic would be really difficult. So we got to work together or we're done here. And what's been fascinating about this is this all lines up with a biblical worldview of human nature. And it probably took someone who himself is craven, who himself, his instincts are not always altruistic. And it took somebody like Donald Trump to call this bluff, who did not have any kind of worldview arguments with history he was attempting to make, other than what's a deal that'll make everybody happy. And it took somebody like that the Arab world and the Muslim world also respected enough to know he would act if we crossed him at the same time. So peace through strength, that still works. And that has brought us now to this very day. Early today, the president said he's proud to be the greatest friend the nation of Israel has ever had. Satanic grifters like Candace Owens, hard to hit. He's on the cover of the Jerusalem Post today. God bless the peacemakers. Satanic grifters like Candace Owens, hard to hit. That's okay. She's still trying to figure out that UTC does not mean Utah, or UTZ does not mean Utah time zone, and trying to implicate the Egyptians in Charlie's murder now. So, guess Josh Hammer's off the hook. The rest of the world, though, is going to move on. Those with a double-digit IQ, we're going to move on and aren't, prone to succumb to such grifting. We're going to move on and we're going to celebrate this because this is a massive paradigm shift. And President Trump, gentlemen, has made two massive gambles that went completely against the conventional wisdom of the Middle East we had been told all of our lives. And they have both paid off bigly both times. Your thoughts?
They are gambles, but they are calculated gambles. They are shrewd gambles. And I'd like to see this lesson translate more and more into domestic policy as well. This isn't a one-to-one, obviously. We have a constitution that we would like to continue to abide by, even though the other side doesn't let us. But this level of consequences and a level of understanding, are you sure you want to play that game? I thought Steve laid that out perfectly. The psychology of all this, Donald Trump, keep going domestically. Same ethos. Get her done.
Yeah, and we've talked for years now about how foreign policy, we just can't afford it to be dogmatic anymore, meaning that we can't afford to project the way that we believe the world should look upon far reaches of the globe. Because those far reaches, unlike 100, 200 years ago, they also have munitions. They also have a lot of high-tech weaponry, still not as high-tech as ours, but they have ways of fighting back that we just didn't see 200 years ago, 100 years ago. I think what you're seeing is a result of that, but not maybe in the way that you think. This is not a dogmatic foreign policy in terms of your government must be staffed by fill in the blank. Your borders must look like fill in the blank for the most part. This is a dogmatic foreign policy of we want peace. That's the bottom line here. That's been a foreign policy that, frankly, the entirety of the West, the United States, has been maybe one of the worst offenders at that under previous administrations, that we want the world to fit into some sort of a cookie cutter. And peace, maybe it's a byproduct of that, maybe it's not. But we're going to spill our blood and treasure to see whatever machinations of the bowels of the Pentagon and deep state come to fruition in Timbuktu. This is different. This is, hey, you stay in power all you want. Make all the money you want, but just don't cross us, and we're going to live happily ever after, or some version of that. Whatever's the most likely version of happily ever after when it comes east of Eden in the Middle East. Okay, so I think what you're seeing as a result of that this is a completely different tact when it comes to foreign policy. That we just can't control everything. We just can't control everything in the nether reaches of the globe. That's the reality, Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's the reality here. So let's do the best with that reality in tow. And I think what we're seeing here is the fruit of that. So again, I mean, guys, when even the mainstream media says multiple times when this peace deal was announced, when the lefties are saying it on ABC and NBC that, okay, yeah, this is a big deal. This is a big win. Take the W. This is a W.
A big one, in fact. A potential generational paradigm shifting one. Let's hope that is the case, and let's be praying for that. More in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at MD Hearing, who makes high-quality, easy-to-use, rechargeable hearing aids with exceptional sound quality that are personalized to your hearing profile, and they cost a fraction of what typical hearing aids cost. And they just launched their new Neo XS. It's their smallest hearing aid ever. Did you know that that new Neo model cost over 90% less than clinical hearing aids, by the way? All right, so listen, you can get high-quality, rechargeable, digital hearing aids for less than $300 a pair, $297. How? Because MD Hearing was founded by an ENT surgeon who saw how many of his patients needed hearing aids but could not afford it, so he made it his mission to develop high-quality hearing aids that anyone could afford. So if you're still on the fence, hey, they were just selected to be the hearing aid supplier for a top Medicare Advantage plan as well. So they are a brand that you can trust. I've given my stepdad MD hearing aids over the last few years. He raves about them as well. So get the high-quality, affordable hearing aids you deserve at MD Hearing. Go to shopmdhearing.com and use promo code Steve to get a pair of hearing aids for less than $300, just $297. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case. That's a $100 value just for being a part of our show. That's shopmdhearing.com, shopmdhearing.com. Use our promo code Steve to get that pair of hearing aids for just $297 at shopmdhearing.com, promo code Steve. Let's welcome back to the program our good friend Bob Vander Plaats. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing really good. Kind of encouraged by our Iowa Hawkeyes right now. That was a fun game at Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was Todd. Wow. And when I mean,
I didn't watch a minute of it.
Then they busted out like the Don Davey era Wisconsin uniforms too, almost as if they were like saying, we're going to a throwback all the way. I think it's like the worst home loss they've had in like
1929.
Yeah, 100 years. Yeah.
Where they did not score a point anyhow.
Yeah.
It's happening all over. I mean, how many big-time college football coaches just yesterday alone got fired? I mean, I'm right. College football is dying right before us. It's not just Wisconsin football. It's dying.
And I think things that we didn't talk about in the past either, like player quit factor. Guys are like, well, we're 5 games into the year. The team sucks. I've already played 3 games. I'm redshirting because I'm saving for a year of eligibility so I can go somewhere else and get paid next year.
You bet.
I think things, the thing is, it's off the rails, man.
Somewhere.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Real quick, before we get to the main topic we were going to talk to you about, we spent a good deal of time after our opening talking about the extraordinary events today in Jerusalem, and now the president is in Cairo. So he's gone to both ends of the negotiating spectrum here, and how President Trump used his experience in his first term of negotiating a lot of lucrative deals in the Arab world to come to the conclusion that the think tanks were wrong. There's actually plenty of people in the Arab world that if you gave them the political rope, would absolutely detach themselves from the fake Palestinian question that every Republican and Democrat administration for 40 years believed they had to navigate and negotiate, and they would detach themselves from it and make peace deals. We saw that happen his first term. He's doubled that gamble now that the Arab world hates Iran every bit as much as we do, and in this case for a lot of the exact same reasons.
Oh, sure.
And he turned out to be right about that. Hamas being tied to Iran, I think, had a lot to do with why for the last 2 years, as Israel just decimated Gaza and Hamas, you did not hear the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis say, this has to stop or we're going to have to get in. Everybody just stayed back. In fact, it almost felt like we were debating this more on the American right than it was being debated over there in many respects. We were debating each other more on this than they were debating it over there, right? But there were clearly lines. I mean, the president saying to the Israelis, you cannot settle the West Bank, okay? I think now and that Hamas has been not totally annihilated, but dealt a mortal blow. The Iranians are the most, and that's one of their primary funding mechanisms, the most isolated they've ever been. And I think what's going to come next is, I think Gaza will become the next Dubai, is what I think will come next. And I think that you will see a massive urban renewal program. All these Arab nations that despised the Palestinian question, despised Iran, I think they will come in and resettle the place. I think it'll be in Istanbul. It'll be a Dubai, kind of a luxury port, and it'll be kind of used as a buffer zone between Israel and the Arab world. I think that's what the end game of this is going to be.
Well, if I can comment to that, one is I'd say leadership matters, and you're seeing that on a world stage. And even though that they diss President Trump, who should have got the Nobel Peace Prize, In my opinion, I don't know who else would deserve it other than him.
In fact, the winner dedicated her award to him, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So, President Trump has just been leading on all sorts of levels. But I think you're right. When he even cast the vision early on about the Riviera of the Middle East being Gaza, like this can be way different. And you think, Steve, the Arab families are really no different than your family or my family. They want peace. They want prosperity. They want to live with some sort of order or predictability, and they're in a very unstable environment. So they see Hamas very much a threat to their way of living. Iran the same way. I think Trump's right. He's called their bluff on it. Obviously, I would be one who would disagree on the West Bank agreement because I think it's as biblical as you can get, Judea and Samaria. But other than that, President Trump has, it's been historic. Places I've been, Jerusalem, Cairo, President El-Sisi, I met with him. I just see President Trump and his leadership. It's making a difference in the Middle East, but it's making a difference worldwide as well. So good for him.
All right, let's switch gears because you were gone much of last week, and I think our audience would be fascinated to know where you went. Where were you?
Well, I went to Colorado Springs, and as soon as I got done with the show last week, flew out to Colorado Springs and did something I don't typically do. I spent 3 days out there, and I was a minor part of the program, meaning before dinner one night, I gave a few remarks and led them in prayer. That was my role. Otherwise, I was just here to take it in. And the reason they wanted me out there is they said, listen, the family leader has a model that's anchored on the bride of Christ, the church, but you also have shown capability to impact elections, to advance righteous and just policy, and to ignite partnership that blesses families. They said, so we think you ought to be out here. And the whole focus, Steve, was Christian education. And right now in the country, 6 million kids are in Christian education or Christian schools. And what they'd like to do is see that number doubled, like within 5 years, go up to 12 million. Because what's happening like in the states like Iowa and Texas and other states, you're seeing this school choice movement take place. Basically say we're advancing parental rights. And so I brought the group back to, and I think your audience would be well served back to Deuteronomy 6. And when you read Deuteronomy 6, there's a lot that can be applied to America. One is we're living in a land flowing with milk and honey. Unprecedented prosperity. Our wealth is running away from other countries. But the big thing is remember the Lord your God when you're doing that. Love him with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. But then right after that talks about, and then teach your children. And it's about when they get up in the morning, when they're in the way during the day, when they go to bed at night. But teach your kids. And really what Moses was doing, he's casting vision for the ultimate homeschool. But the homeschool isn't possible. What type of Christian, where did you send your kids to school?
Mm-hmm.
And so what they're trying to do is say, let's take advantage of this Christian education environment that we have in front of us. Let's birth it in parental rights. And so whether parents make homeschool their choice, Christian school their choice, or let's say they make public school their choice. I'm a former public educator where I taught and coached and was a high school principal in the public education system. The only way you're going to clean up that system is if you give real homeschool and real Christian education and parental rights an opportunity to live. But get all the garbage out of the public schools. Don't abandon the public schools, but get the garbage out of the public schools. The big thing, give kids high-quality options. And I found it fascinating because of the circumstance in which we live. And then one other thing, it's a proof that elections matter. We don't get all this stuff without Governor Kim Reynolds. Matter of fact, you don't get all this stuff without Donald Trump. Because Trump and his Department of Education in the One Big Beautiful Bill, which not a lot of people know about, but beginning next year, 2026, Bob and Darla is a married couple, $1,700 a person, $3,400 a couple. We can give to a scholarship granting organization, SGO, our $3,400, or it's going to go to the federal government. But we give it to an SGO, it's a dollar for dollar tax break from the federal government. Millions upon millions of dollars are going to flood into the system. And what it's going to do is going to give inner city schools, like you guys are familiar with Joshua Christian Academy here in Des Moines, an opportunity for parents to get out of a failed public school environment and into quality Christian education. I think it's a praise God moment and cheering on the parental rights to take full advantage of this as they move forward.
So how prepared are we to do everything you just talked about?
Well, there's some hurdles. One is infrastructure. Two is, do you have the teachers to do it as well?
Right.
And do you have the curriculum that you're going to be able to do this? And we think we can answer all that. And that's why they wanted us out there, because as you know, we have a very vibrant church ambassador network here in the state of Iowa and now in 20 other states. And the big thing is, how do you anchor it in the church to where the senior pastors see the raising and nurturing of children as part of their mission, both for parents but for the children as well? And to me, that's a duh, right? We need to restore marriages back to moms and dads, but then also allow them, give them the best tools possible to raise their kids in a Christian environment. So whether that's homeschool or Christian education, and if it's public school, just know what you're getting into, but how do you still keep the Deuteronomy 6 mantle? So the Church Ambassador Network will be a key answer to this, a foundational answer to this. The other piece of this, though, if you think outside the box with me just a little bit, infrastructure. Infrastructure is hugely expensive. And there's some schools, like in our area, Des Moines Christian, has got a huge new campus plan. It's going to be millions upon millions of dollars to implement that. They also have a waiting list. But what we know in the Church Ambassador Network, there's a lot of churches who have infrastructure that they're not using.
Buildings that are just sitting open, you mean, from 5 days a week.
They've got classrooms already.
Yep.
So there's a way to get those.
How many times have I yelled on this show about the evangelical mausoleum in the suburbs that at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday, it's just sitting there, 50,000 square feet. Nobody's using it. Somebody's just mowing the weeds.
Yeah, the parking lots are empty.
Yep.
The school buildings are empty. What a better way than for a church to embrace Christian education within its walls of saying, let's give our kids an opportunity to attend right here. They're used to going here anyhow.
They could do homeschool co-ops. They could even just literally start a school right there in that building.
And what you do, it's an opportunity for the church to grow their church. Because also neighborhood kids go, you know what? Our families, I'd like to get.
I mean, if Vacation Bible School for 1 week a year,
yes,
is worth the outlay investment for a church in attracting the children of the community, then I don't know. I mean, what would the force multiplier of offering that, a variation of that, but with, a standardized education 8 months out of the year? If it's worth the outlay to do it 1 week of the year because of what it does to engender goodwill within the community, then why wouldn't permanently offering such a thing year-round do the same thing?
Without question. And Steve, if you look at the numbers, say a family is very committed to going to church every Sunday and they're in church every Wednesday night. Typically, the Sunday messages aren't geared to the children anyhow, but let's say they are. That's an hour. Wednesday night is another hour, hour and a half. So you give them 2 to 3 hours a week. If you have them in a Christian education system, take 6 hours a day times 5, and it's 30 hours a week on top of what they get at church and on Wednesday night. It is a force multiplier like crazy in really nurturing our children. So if you really believe that we're in an environment today, and we talk about it all the time on this show and other places, this is spiritual warfare. What happened to Charlie was spiritual warfare. Well, if it's spiritual warfare, why would you gird your children for the battle by the full teaching of the gospel and God's word and how they view everything through that lens? So to me, as a guy that went through Christian school from kindergarten all the way through college, but then went into the public school system intentionally to be a teacher, coach, and high school principal to try to bring light into a dark place, but now to reform public school, give parents an option with Christian school or homeschool. This is a thing of beauty. If I'm a parent right now or a grandparent, do not miss this opportunity. It's probably one of the biggest evangelism things I can think of that's right in our backyard.
Todd and Aaron, you guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, a couple things to make this happen that are non-negotiable, and they're going to happen sooner or later. But this is basically a declaration of war against the teachers' unions, and rightly so. You have to shatter their hold on credentialing teachers. Yep. You should be able to hire whoever you want to as educators. Secondly,
great point.
Way too many Christian schools, ultimately the ones of means, they end up being default high-end prep schools. That needs to stop. They need to be Christian schools first, and that means we need to have the trades in there somehow as well, which is a more expensive enterprise, but you just can't say it costs too much. We're going to let that whole segment of society be under the sway of the public schools. So this is a really important ask, but those have to be covered.
Let me answer both of them. One is on the teachers' unions and the accrediting and all that stuff. What's going to trump all that is student outcomes. So therefore, you have to have high-quality education. If you have the student outcomes, you can dismiss all that stuff. In regards to trade or prep or whatever it is, let innovation take place now. So it fits your community, it fits your whatever. You are not stymied by a one-size-fits-all. Let innovation take place, and the cream will rise to the top. It's the ultimate in competition.
Aaron?
Well, I think this is obviously a good kind of good news and a good idea and a good track that we're on here. But I would echo some of Todd's concerns as well. I do think I prefer these conversations and fears about, hey, you don't want to let your Christian institution, you don't want to let your Christian school turn into ... versus my kid came home, he just talked to the school counselor, and he thinks he's a she now.
Right.
I think that's indicative of the fact that the Overton window not only has been expanded, but we're playing offense, at least on some level. At the same time, you do have to safeguard because what you're talking about here has the possibility to be one of the biggest boons for Christian education. You just mentioned that in passing. I do like the conversations about how do we safeguard this for the future versus how do we even fight back against the school districts and the teachers unions who hate our guts. I do think that this is indicative of the fact that we're actually taking ground for once now. A lot of work to be done. There is no victory flags at all yet, but I do like the direction, the trajectory that we're on.
You get the last word, Bob. Got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, the beauty of it is, as a matter of fact, we heard this at the conference where one guy said, the first thing you do if the house is on fire, get your kids out of the house.
Yep.
This would give an opportunity to get the kids out of the house. The big thing, the onus, I believe, and I reiterate this often, it has to be high quality with real outcomes to show that you're outpacing, outperforming anything that's happened in the public schools. That's how you'll break them, and I think we can do it.
Good job, buddy. Appreciate it. That's good stuff.
Thanks.
All right, we'll come back. Your turn to ask me anything next. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, alongside Aaron McIntyre and Todders, and I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. Again, that is at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you love the podcast version, please share your love far and wide by leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of preference. And then you can also hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow, and that'll make sure that every time we do a new episode, it shows up right there for sure every time in your feed. And I mean, literally tens of thousands and tens of thousands of you have done those things for us. So thank you all very much. Let's keep it going. Appreciate each and every single one. Like we appreciate our friends over at Jace Medical. We've talked about them a lot over the last few years. And they came on board because they saw things like drugs that were just given Nobel Peace Prizes, then turned around and labeled horse paste and dangerous so that they could give you other drugs that they gave a black box warning to that wouldn't work, but would hurt your kidneys if you took it. Better chance of that happening. And so they could also then treat you like a lab rat for the largest onboarding human trial in the history of human medicine. And that's why they came on board. And Jace has been working to expand their lineup of preparedness solutions tailored for you and your family. And you go ahead and get to the original Jace case with the 5 venerable antibiotics. But now there are other preparedness kits as well. You can include first aid, expand these things into more of the personal medications that you or members of your family might need. There's even more exciting things coming soon from our friends at Jace. So enter the promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order when you go to jace.com. That's promo code DEACE at JASE.com. Promo code DACE at jace.com for a discount on your order with the promo code of my last name, Dace. For the discount on your order, promo code DACE at checkout at jace.com. Well, we haven't had a chance to do one of these in a while with all the various travel and everything that's been going on. So let's do some Ask Me Anything.
Okay.
All right. So the questions were offered to our followers over on X. Todd, you have gone through said questions. I've not seen any of them. You've selected the ones that we're going to attempt to answer on the air. Aaron has those questions. Anything I should be on the lookout for from a theme standpoint, or are they kind of everywhere today?
Well, there is one question in here that is a placeholder for the most dominant concern.
I can probably guess what the question is about.
And over again. And even if they are trying to pick a new angle, the question is basically ultimately the same.
Okay.
So.
I'm going to guess. I'm going to know it when it comes up, but let's find out. Okay. Aaron, fire away.
A Florida man is first, who says the left can unify and support evil to forward their narrative. How can the right defeat it if we can't even unify following the murder of a top 3 or at least top 5 conservative leader? Go hard.
Well, this is why I've been using a term the last few days of satanic grifter. We have gone beyond demonic of just being an entity of deception to one of purposeful division, sowing discord on purpose for the most cynical and nihilistic of means. And that is satanic. Slandering the brethren is satanic. Acting as a perpetual accuser is satanic. So I think that's why this has to be confronted and dealt with. Because on a broad scale, we have 2 worldview problems among our people. And in both, and neither case is anybody's fault. Because it's what was done to us by institutions that were created to stop this from happening to us, and they did it to us instead. And so the first institution is the church. It has just taken a year off of discipling the nation. And the primary role of the church, the primary duty of the church is to turn saints into sinners into saints, and then equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And to disciple nations. That's the gospel. That's the Great Commission. It has taken a generation off from that. And so unfortunately, the amount of critical thinking in our culture is greatly diminished. Because of one of these, we have more information at our fingertips than we have ever had before. And unfortunately, though, it has come to us at a time that we are the least equipped to discern it. Because the church just took the generation off. It peddled wares instead of fulfilling its prophetic obligation. It cared more about being profitable than prophetic. And then number 2, the civic institutions that the founding and framing generations of this country created to prevent this from happening on a philosophical level have all been weaponized against us. And so there are no more institutions, and then you throw in the breakdown of families and everything else. There are no more institutions that are in the culture to safeguard us from not being able to think our way out of a paper bag. And it's not our own fault. We can't train ourselves. We can't discern ourselves. How will they hear the word if there's no one to preach it? And then we just did that section of scripture in Romans, did we not? So throw that in to now we literally can't trust anything. most of the time. And the opportunity for grifters to come in and exploit and expose that in the most cynical, nihilistic, and craven of motivations is replete. It's omnipresent. Some of you have sent me emails asking me why I have not looked at alternative information regarding Charlie's murder like I did with COVID. See, this is what I'm talking about. Would you like to know how much alternative information we looked at during COVID? How much of alternative information did we look at? Zero. We looked at zero alternative information. I had to learn how to read medical studies from Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Japan and South Korea. I didn't look at any. Dude, if we had used alternative sources of information, I'd have been banned the first day. Why did so many other people get banned and we didn't? When we're the ones writing the #1 book in America about it. Why did so many other people get banned and we did not? Because we used their own information against them. We didn't actually go to any alternative forms of information. We didn't know, who knows what of those we could have trusted? Why do you think we had more footnotes than pages in Fauci and Bargain? And go look at the footnotes, guys. They're Harvard, Yale, New England Journal of Medicine. We couldn't afford to use alternative pieces of information. The first massive antibody study done in America on COVID was from Stanford. That's where Jay Bhattacharya and his team did it. How many times during COVID did we have RFK Jr. on? How many?
Never.
Zero. I didn't even talk to him until we were both part of Whitlock's documentary in January of 23, I think it was the first time I met him and even talked to him. We couldn't afford to use alternative pieces of information. We'd gotten banned right away. The reason they couldn't ban us is we used their information against them. By the way, alternative forms of information should not be given any benefit of the doubt that the skepticism, either you're a skeptic or you're not. I mean, I don't know how many times someone like Candace has to just tell you things that are wrong and be exposed. I don't know how many more times. At that point, it's a you problem. At least ask her to, send you a Christmas card to make sure her and George have a good Christmas this year. Because you did your part. So no, we didn't use a bunch of alternative pieces of information. We couldn't afford to do that. I mean, the very first weekend I sat down with Tyler and Gaston, the brass here at the Blaze, all weekend long, early March, mid-March, whenever that was, of 2020, game planning this out. Do you think they're going to risk $100 million business on their third or fourth highest rated show because he read over on granolacruncher.com that the whole thing's a scam? So we're going to let it all ride on that? No. Okay? Come on. What happened to us is not our fault. The enemy co-opted these institutions, and then the ones he didn't co-opt, they just abrogated, like the church. But that's not an excuse to be morons. We didn't just use a bunch of alternative pieces of information. We used theirs. Over and over and over again. I cited CDC data for you over and over again. Go back and listen to those shows. Go read Fauci and Bargain again. how many times, I would have figured you would have had it memorized how many times we quoted Fauci's article in February of 2020 in the New England Journal of Medicine about his profile of COVID. How many times did we cite that? How many times did we quote that? How many times did we refer to it? I didn't use alternativemedicine.org to tell you the COVID vaccines didn't work. We were literally going through every state health department's internal data on COVID from the state, the government. We went through the numbers. They were always there. They just didn't want them publicized. We used their numbers. And then I didn't tell you that it didn't work at all in stopping the disease until Rochelle Walensky from the head of the CDC told us. So again, I don't have a problem with question everything. I don't. The issue is where we're going to go for answers. And we just have to be more discerning than this. And this lack of discernment is what's going to cause division, because we're going to let these grifters take advantage of us. Is this the question you were talking about? The very first one? Or is there one even more specific than this one?
It's more specific.
Because this is the topic, right? This is what I figured was the topic you were...
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of these were about. Yes.
All right, do you want to move on?
Yeah, we can move on.
Mark Carlson says, do you think the president took the COVID booster the other day?
So I have wrestled with this. And we're going to get into this more in the overtime today. Some polling results of our audience on what you think of the president. Would you have recommended he take a COVID booster? The White House is saying on Friday that he did.
I think he took it.
I'm going to say that he took it.
He's a believer.
Yeah.
A believer enough.
Believer enough. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. He's a believer enough, right? And you know what? I would look at, I would look at how the president feels about vaccines. The way that if you really love your team, but you're kind of honest about their fallacies at the same time, right? So you're not the fan that calls into the show every loss blaming the referees, for example, right? Okay. Like, did I think that Aaron's Chiefs got a few favorable calls last night? I do, but you didn't hear me say anything about it on X, Y, because they were kicking our ass up and down the field, so it didn't make much of a difference. It wasn't going to make a difference. Had nothing to do with the outcome of the game. Nothing. Most fans can't think like that, though. But in the end, I'm a fan of the Lions. So in the end, am I going to close ranks and root for the Lions? Yeah, I'm going to close ranks. I'm a fan. I think that's a good way of looking at the president. I don't think it's a religious level of zealotry to him. Otherwise, his worldview would not have permitted RFK Jr. to have the platform he has. And for the president to say some of the things he said just a few weeks ago about too many childhood vaccines, too many given all at once. These things should be spaced out. No reason for a kid to have an HPV vaccine, right? Okay. If you are fanatical about something, you're never going to demonstrate that level of self-awareness or critical thinking. So I don't think he's like an obnoxious, my team never lost, they just ran out of time. Every time we lose, all right, the refs screwed us, okay? I don't think he's an obnoxious zealot about vaccines. But in the end, I do think he still believes in the overall framework and construct. It's a fair, kind of a sloppy metaphor, but you okay with how I just laid that out?
I get what you're doing.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to say that he did. But man, I hope he didn't. He's 78, man. I don't know.
I'm way more comfortable if he did. If he didn't, that's a level of manipulation that, dude.
All right. So I guess I hadn't looked at it from that angle. I was just thinking about his own physical health. Like, guy that's consumed as much fast food over the years as he had. taking something that accelerates inflammation of your heart all the more at 78. But you're right. I guess I didn't even think about the other psyop angle to it. I was just, my concern was of him as an individual first.
If you're not thinking of the
Todd's like, screw him. I'm concerned whether he's actually just lying to all of us, which, hey, I respect that too. Yeah. I'm going to say, though, in the end, that he took it.
Next, we go to Polo G, who says, I had an experience in church yesterday. I was repeating a prayer from the pastor, and all of a sudden I felt this huge weight lift off of me and this glorious feeling of peace come over me as I started bawling in church. It was embarrassing. Does that mean I was forgiven? Or did I just have one of those mountaintop experiences I've heard about?
Well, the answer could be yes, because I don't know what it is that you were praying over and what the particular source of the weight was. I mean, if the source of the weight was as a direct result of your sin, then I would argue that you likely experienced divine forgiveness. And I think if it was maybe more about a dilemma you were facing or a situation that maybe you were feeling was impossible on your own to navigate, then it might have been more of the mountaintop experience, perhaps. But since I don't know what the source of the weight was, I can't describe it. But I mean, listen, I have had that happen to me in church many times over the years. So, and I don't think it's anything to be embarrassed by at all. Nothing to be embarrassed by whatsoever. That's genuine emotional intimacy with your maker. If anything, err on the side of threatening to idolatrize that. Is that a word? By wanting it so much that you feel almost like if I can't contrive it and make it happen, like it wasn't a sincere worship experience. I think that's a way healthier temptation moving in the long run for you, brother, than being embarrassed that it happened for you this one particular time. That makes sense?
Very.
If we're going to err on the side of one of these, of one aspect of this ratio, I'd err on the side of, being, too focused on trying to recreate that emotional experience over and over again than feeling embarrassed about it ever happening even to you once. Praise God for it instead.
Dennis is next. Can we make public education great again? How can it be done? Will it be done? Our children deserve a great education.
It can only be done with the following two steps. Number one, the teachers' unions have to be irrevocably broken, irredeemably broken. They cannot be negotiated with, not allowed back, reconstituted. They just are demonic strongholds and constructs, and they're shibboleths of the damned that have to be smashed. But then here's the thing. You cannot just have government schools that are just going to teach, reading, writing, and arithmetic. These are human beings with souls. They have questions. So, they can be non-sectarian. They can be non-sectarian, right? Like, for example, TPUSA Faith, led by my man, Lucas, founded by my man, the late, great Charlie Kirk. Both of them very committed evangelicals. So it's not like an explicitly evangelical thing, but it's imbued and fused with that because that's who it was. That's, who founded it was Charlie, and who was running it is Lucas, who still is. And Lucas and I will do an event together at the University of South Carolina on Thursday night. My guess is, since it'll be two evangelicals doing it, it'll be heavily imbued with an evangelical perspective on things. Now, if you go to the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, another great guy who runs it, Catholic, right? And so the faith-based worldview is integral to Heritage's mission, but it is non-sectarian, meaning that it doesn't take a particular position of specificity on issues of theological divergence. To me, secular schools are impossible because there's no such thing as the secular. It's impossible to begin with. Something will always rule. Someone will always be worshipped every single time. Or someone will always rule and something will always be worshipped, depending on how you want to phrase it. So the idea of secular you can't have. You could do non-sectarian, though. And what would that look like? That look a lot like what public schools looked like in America for the first 100, 150 years. 10 Commandments were everywhere. There was prayer. Bible was taught. Maybe as a history book, a textbook. Which, of course, is way radical compared to what's going on there now. But the idea that you're just going to remove the demonic elements and just turn them into like technocratic, utilitarian places of skill training, that's not, human beings aren't technocratic, utilitarian beings. Each one has a soul. And so the longings of the soul are going to come out. Either they're going to be addressed one way or the other. The idea that they're never going to be addressed, or you're just going to sufficiently address it by making sure they've all taken STEM. No. Those things have to be addressed. So they can be addressed either with the openly demonic and directly demonic influence of the teachers' unions, or a generic faith-based non-sectarian view, like what you'd see at a Heritage Foundation. But the idea that they're going to be just secular training centers of skills, no, they won't. Because nothing is secular. Absolutely nothing is. But that argument can't possibly be had until the teacher unions are broken and shattered, like the shibboleth of the dam that they are. Short of that, if you have any means whatsoever to get your kids out of those schools, I would highly recommend that you do.
Next, we go to Apollo Jedi, who appears to have a lightsaber or maybe a sword in the profile picture, who asks, if a Christian denies young earth creation, to which serious theological problems will he be susceptible?
I was fascinated by this as a Catholic. Is there a group of errors, so to speak, that kind of end up one automatically snowballing from the other in this, if you have this particular worldview on creation? It happens in other areas. Whatever you think, this group of differences tends to be lumped together within dispensationalism or with Reformed or what people perceive in Catholicism. They just is there something about this that tends to gather the same kind of opinions about Scripture, ecclesiology, what have you?
Well, I'm going to answer this question thusly. I would say if you are a young earth creationist, you are less prone to further biblical error. But I don't think if you're not, it means that you're automatically duty bound to be in error either. And I would say the first, let me explain why that is. I would say the first is because most people that are young earth creationists are young earth creationists because they believe what the Bible says, or they interpret what the Bible says first, and then hold the scientific data up to that standard. And if it doesn't meet it, they reject it, no matter how overwhelming the scientific case may appear to be. And so if that is your dividing line as a starting point, then I do agree you are likely to be less prone later on to further attempts to syncretize with the spirit of the age in other areas where there's societal pressure. Because, human beings have figured this out, and this is just conventional wisdom, and if you don't get this, then you're a troglodyte, you're a knuckle dragger, you're unevolved, right? Okay, you're a caveman, whatever pejorative you want to throw out there. I think that sort of pressure that can be applied on a host of other issues in our culture, you're probably less prone of succumbing to if you're a young earth creationist, because you've already accepted from the very beginning of the Bible that absolutely everything has to be held up to an explicit understanding of the Word of God. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But I've also met over the years many people who have different views on young earth creationism, some of it informed by science, and yet they also have been able to completely withstand societal pressure on abandoning orthodoxy further because they just don't view the Bible as primarily a scientific textbook. Like, for example, I can't learn how to do open heart surgery from the Bible. I can't learn how to I can't learn how to do CPR from the Bible. I can't learn how to do triage from the Bible. I can't learn how to harness electricity from the Bible. I can't learn how to create indoor plumbing from the Bible. Stuff like that. And I think I'm going to leave it there, unless you guys think there's something more I should add to that. Or there's a participle still dangling I'm not addressing.
It's amazing we talk so much about the back end of things, ecclesiology, eschatology, and then where not the Jews don't ultimately line up and all that. But I can't remember the last time on this show we talked about young Earth creationism. I don't even know how dominant.
Speaking for myself, I would be far more interested to know why you want to come to that conclusion or explore that conclusion more than that conclusion in and of itself. Are you arriving at old Earth or whatever you want to call it because you want to synthesize what modern science and Darwinianism has to say about the world around us? Or is it because that's what you truly see from both Scripture and the evidence around you?
Right. Like I 100% don't believe it's possible long-term to have an intimate relationship with Christ and be a Darwinist. 100%. I don't believe that. You can do that. Because one was literally created to challenge the other's narrative. That's the entire point. Okay. All right. That's like, well, I'm a Christian, but I'm fascinated by the occult. No, you're not. You're just a heretic. So you just don't know it yet, or you're not willing to admit it. More questions next. You could save a ton of money on any forthcoming interest rate drop, but only if your credit is ready to take advantage of that. And that's where Smart Credit comes in. On average, Smart Credit users raise their credit score up to 34 points in just 30 days. That can mean a lower car payment, better mortgage rates, major savings for you and your family. With their patented technology that scans your credit profile and pinpoints exactly which bills to pay and when to maximize your score. Yes, and when. Oh man, I got a huge inheritance. I just paid off all my debt. Well, that's great. But it doesn't mean likely that your credit score is going to be 800 in a month. All right? Because, the whole thing is kind of That's why you need Smart Credit. All right? So you have the best credit knowledge right there in your pocket. So don't wait. Take control of your credit score with Smart Credit. Be ready to cash in when interest rates fall. Start with your 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/Steve for just $1. That's right, for just $1, and see how many points you can add to your credit score. That's smartcredit.com/Steve. Smartcredit.com/Steve. Average point changes are based on historical data. Individual results may vary and are not guaranteed. All right, let's get back to some more Ask Me Anything.
Let's go to Terry, who asks, an increasing number of believers and non-believers speak about their loved ones watching them from heaven. I recall nowhere in the Bible where this is referenced. If it were possible, what keeps the departed from seeing the bad along with the good, tainting heaven for them?
All right, you got to tell me why you chose this question. Because I know I did not read any of them, but I did see we received well over 100 of them. So I need to know why, with well over 100 of them in there, you specifically chose this one.
Well, there's multiple angles to it, but this is there's clearly Catholic content. That's not the priority of it there. But the way the last part is asked, how it was more philosophical, that to be exposed in heaven to the things of earth, by definition, doesn't really make it heaven, because your joy would be robbed by seeing sin play out. I'm paraphrasing here, but I found that, and I know you love basically untying the philosophical knots of things. That's what's clearly implied in all that, and what whether scripturally or theologically, it was worthy of taking on.
Okay, all right.
I think to me that was the most fascinating. The Mariology of it that's implied in it is, I just wanted to acknowledge it off the top, but that's not why. Does that make what you know of heaven scripturally? It doesn't have to be specific to this. Is it impossible by definition in heaven to know what's going on earth, because it would rob you of joy because you'd see sin playing out?
Well, before I answer it then from my evangelical perspective, out of curiosity, because most of our audience probably will not know the answer, what's the Catholic basis for believing that the dead are aware of what's happening here? What's the Catholic basis for that?
Excuse me, my cough. Well, the fact that prayer ultimately is a means of seeing through a glass darkly, and that from the Catholic point of view, since there is a purgatory, where that the things that can be done here on earth are efficacious for those who are going to heaven but need to be purged of their sin, and that ultimately there is a understanding therein within the communion of saints of who we are one to another. Like our heavenly bodies are not, in terms of that communion, we do not rob relationship. They accentuate relationship all the more. And so and when you are in full with God, as God sees past, present, future, all at one time, understands the redemptive story, it seems to me that simply because you're in heaven, if you understand the redemptive story, the mere exposure to sin or something unheavenly cannot rob you by definition. This is where you are. It's funny. I think this is where I suddenly become the guy who believes in election on. I think the script is flipped, where once you're in heaven, you can't have you understand the whole ball game. And
listen, if you hold Augustine in any regard, Protestant or Catholic, you believe in some form of election. You just do, because he did. And then we debate the merits of the extent of his understanding of election and whether we agree with it or not. Does it go, we're getting sidetracked a little bit now, but does it go as far as how Calvin understood it, for example? All right, but if you hold Augustine in any regard whatsoever, and most Catholics and Protestants do, you believe in some form of election. It's just a matter of to what extent and how far are we going to go with it. Aaron, can you put the question back up there really quick?
Yeah.
Okay. Because here's the thing, I would urge if it were possible, what keeps the departed from seeing the bad along with the good, tainting heaven for them? It's a good question, but as a general rule, I would suggest not doing biblical exegesis on the basis of what makes sense to us, because we're sinners. right?
That was the point of the last question where I said, I want to know why you want to consider young Earth versus whatever the alternative viewpoint is.
So I think we need to, it doesn't mean that that's always wrong, by the way, but as a general rule, just be leery about, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. And having that be the basis for rightly dividing the word of the only perfect, transcendent being in the entire cosmos. That's all. All right, so the Protestant understanding of this largely comes from a handful of scripture. This is where sola scriptura comes in. Most Protestants, not all, but the vast majority of Protestants do not believe the dead are aware, or can maybe not. Yeah, the dead are not aware of what is happening here, and are not looking down on us in the traditional Hallmarkian kind of way. For example, in the parable of Lazarus, right? He recognizes he's in torment, but he cannot cross the great chasm to warn his loved ones. He can't do that, for example. Is it, which scripture is it? It's somewhere in Hebrews. It is appointed man once to die, and then the judgment, and absent of the body is to be present with the Lord. And then I want to say it's somewhere in Proverbs or Ecclesiastes, one of Solomon's books, where he explicitly says, the dead are dead and don't know anything. Now, of course, he's writing in a pre-resurrection understanding of the afterlife, right? But I only brought that up to say this was something that was considered among the those in the Old Testament too. Now, in Revelation, there is a scripture, and let me look this up and make sure I have it right here. In Revelation, there is a scripture that talks about the prayers of the saints, and it's early in Revelation, right? And this is, I know, some of the basis for what you guys believe on this as well. Okay. So I wouldn't say that there is zero biblical evidence for this, but Protestants traditionally believe the overwhelming amount of biblical evidence suggests that the dead are aware of the state that they are in. Like in the parable of Lazarus, he is aware that he is in torment in hell. He is aware of this. All right, he is self-aware, but he cannot cross over and warn his loved ones to not follow his path. So it's a fascinating topic. Oh. I really don't think one's views on this, frankly, change anything. I mean, I could, like, going back to that guy's question at the end, I could actually if the premise is, it doesn't make sense to me that if they're still in recognition of the suffering happening down here would taint their view of heaven, I could actually flip that around and say it would do the exact opposite. Yeah. I could actually say you'd actually have more appreciation for the state of bliss that you are now in, because you are still aware of the suffering that is happening still down here on the mortal coil, right? That's where we have to be very careful about whether we're going to examine things on the basis of whether or not it makes sense to us philosophically. Because then you could also just turn things back around and, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. And now we're kind of debating what we think and not what the scriptures actually say.
Yeah, I think I should have just from the beginning. I was expanding upon what Catholics ultimately believe to be within the Lord's Prayer. Well, teach us how to pray. Well, that's fundamental. I don't think the first part of it, people aren't just in heaven, like popping popcorn and like sitting there and watching what's going on. That's not happening true. But the conduit is prayer. That is how we communicate. That is how we communicate with God and into the heavens. And I don't think that's a negotiable concept, but within the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Ready to move on?
Ready to move on, yeah.
Matt says, Steve, how should we as Christians reconcile the merit-based American ideal with the grace-based Christian worldview? Is meritocracy simply a practical system for governing in a fallen world that we should keep at arm's length as a worldly value?
Excellent question, but it's an excellent question, but you are assuming things are in conflict when they are not. The notions of meritocracy in our American system actually come out of the scriptures. There's been very little meritocracy in this world, folks, outside of a biblical worldview. Very little. Much of what this world has looked like outside of a biblical worldview is bigger, tougher, stronger, more privileged, richer, inherited, hereditary station. The idea of
survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. The idea of meritocracy starts right in the scriptures. God is no respecter of persons. We're all created in the likeness and image of God. He's counted the hair on all of our heads. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. None would choose him. There is none righteous, not a single one. So the ideas of meritocracy begin with those premises. And then they are further concluded, like in the parable of the talents, where each of the servants is given a talent, and the one that did not multiply his is the one that is punished.
Not just lazy, but wicked.
Wicked, indeed. And then you also see in the kingdom come, or what happens when we get to heaven, right? That salvation is for all. But the idea that faithfulness is an egalitarian reward is not true. And it says this right. It says, listen, it does say right in the scriptures, right, that those who suffered the martyr's death are given a certain crown. Those who were more faithfulness earned more. And so the salvation is the same. But the reward of what we did with that salvation, this is kind of what the parable of the workers is about. So let me put the parable of the worker in a different context. You live a long life of walking with the Lord. He converts you in your early teen years, and you spend most of your entire adult life for decades walking with the Lord. You try to reach someone you dearly love on their deathbed. And you do. And God allows you to reach them so they repent of their sins and accept the forgiveness offered only through Christ. That loved one who did not walk faithfully with the Lord all those years, but on his deathbed truly repented and received Christ, did he receive the same salvation that you did when you walked with him for decades? Did he receive the same salvation? Yes, he did. But he doesn't have the same station. This is what the parable means when he says, "Hey, you got paid more. Were you not paid for all the time you were here doing the work? Did I not pay you? So you got paid more, correct? You did make more because you were here serving me the whole time and earned a wage for doing those righteous works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you were paid the same in terms of wage, but not the same wages, because your level of faithfulness was longer. It's a little bit like in the Old Testament, that's what the tax was. It was the tithe. Everybody paid 10%. So Boaz, who we know is one of the richest men of the Old Testament, he pays 10%, right? The widow pays 10%. Everybody pays 10%. Now, is 10% more? Is Boaz still paying more than the widow? A lot more. Because 10% to him is a lot more than, in terms of sheer volumes of dollars, is a lot more drachmas and denarii than what the widow is paying, right? Right? But did they pay the same rate? Yes. So the loved one on her deathbed received the same salvation that you did, despite the fact that you worked all those years, or you walked all those years in faithful obedience. But when you get to heaven, you're going to receive a different station and recognition for that faithfulness. The same salvation, but different recognition. So all the ideas that we have of meritocracy actually all come out of a biblical worldview. And you can't even have a meritocracy unless we all believe that we all essentially have the same level of inherent value. If we don't start there, then it can be a lot of things, but it's not a meritocracy. Because on some level, you're starting behind somebody else. So they're not in conflict at all. But one actually came from the other. Excellent question, though. All right, when we come back with the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers that you're going to watch later today at blazetv.com/days, we asked you a question about Trump and taking another COVID booster. And we're going to discuss what your thoughts on that question were for subscribers. For the rest of you, go hard. Romans 8:28. See you tomorrow.